Hello, Jamf Nation. My name is Jackie Walker, and with me today is Joe Patutsky. Joe and I are employees of QuestTech, currently positioned at Norwin School District. Norwin is a medium-sized school district located just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and serving over 5,100 students and 500 staff.
QuestTech is a managed service provider with nearly 40 years of experience serving school districts across Pennsylvania. QuestTech currently supports 164 K-12 facilities across 40 different school districts.
Today, Joe and I are here to talk to you about how we succeeded in bridging the gap between educator and IT needs here at Norwin by using Jamf Self Service and the app request process as a counselor between the two groups. So where do we begin? Let's go back to a magical time we like to call pre-COVID. Norwin had about 500 iPads across the district, stored in library carts and shared lockers. The iPads were used mainly for single assignments and special projects. We did have an MDM, but it was clunky with very limited management capabilities and little to no granularity in regards to security and management features. We also had no formal processes or procedures in place to govern device management or app requests and usage. Then along came COVID, and with it the need to move to one-to-one device distribution overnight. With that distribution, we also needed a robust, powerful MDM solution and strong policies and procedures regarding devices and applications, because our devices would no longer be living solely on the safety of our network. They would be going out into the world and home with our students. Our nightmare began when we realized that we had close to 700 applications for merely 500 devices. Many of those apps had the same or similar functionality. There was zero documentation as to who was using what app or what department had paid for which licenses. Basically, we had a completely unmanageable situation on our hands. Attempts to remedy this situation led to a needs tug-of-war between the teaching staff and the IT department. On the IT side of the rope, we had an immediate need to reduce the number of apps that we were managing for a number of reasons. For starters, we needed improved license management for better control over which devices could access which apps. IT also needed better control of security and update management to ensure that our devices would be secure both on and off our network. We needed to manage storage on our devices and ensure that students would not be running out of space necessary for iOS updates. And most importantly, we needed robust documentation. We needed to know who was using these apps, how they were using them, and who was paying for the licenses. On the teacher side of the rope was a need to be innovative in the classroom. Teachers wanted access to the latest technology. They needed a variety of resources to meet differentiated learning needs, and they wanted access to fun and relevant supplemental materials. Most importantly, they needed quick, easy access to new applications as their instructional needs changed. So how did we end this game of tug-of-war? Well, at Norwin, we worked to form what we called the Curriculum App Committee. This committee was made up of members of the IT department, a couple of lead teachers, and an administrator to act as our mediator. We began working as a committee to determine which of the apps on our previous MDM were viable for the district as a whole and needed to be kept and moved to Jamf. We also determined that we had a strong need for new processes and procedures that would be mutually beneficial to all parties. We then went out and found ourselves a good therapist, Jamf Self Service. Self Service allowed us to create an easily navigable system of apps that are currently available to all of our staff and students. It allowed us to customize our app categories according to teacher and student need. And it allowed us to set the appropriate security and scope on apps to ensure that everyone had access to only those apps that they needed. Now Joe is going to walk you through how we set up self-service here at Norwin in a way that enabled us to meet the needs of both teachers and IT.
So first, let's talk about self-service. Students and employees at Norwin School District do not have access to the App Store on their devices. So how do these individuals install the apps that they need? They use Jamf Self Service app. Self-service is like an app store that allows users to see and install the apps that have been approved for their devices. So when you first open self-service, you'll see all of the apps that are available to be installed on your device. If you're looking for an app in particular, you do have the option to search for an app by using the search feature located at the bottom right corner of the app. Here, you can type in the name of the app that you're looking for. So as an example, I'll use the word Osmo. As you can see, there are quite a few options available for installation under this search. So I'll go ahead and choose Osmo Newton, and when I tap the install button, it will begin the installation process on this device. And as you can see, the app is now installing without the user ever needing to go to the App Store. Users also have the ability to search for an app via the categories that were determined in conjunction with our lead teachers in IT. To do a search this way, open Self-Service and click on the three vertical dots located near the top left corner of the display. Here you can see all the different categories of apps that are available to install have now appeared. For example, I'll choose productivity, and all the available productivity apps are now displayed. If I wanted to install Google Keep, I can tap on the install button next to that app, and as simple as that, Jamf will take care of the rest. So now that I've shown you what self-service can offer, let's go ahead and take a look at how you can go about setting it up. To start setting up your self-service app for your school, let's first go over how you can properly brand your store using your school's colors and logo. So to do this, you're going to open Jamf in your browser and click on the sprocket at the top right corner of the page. On the next page, we're going to scroll down until we see self-service, and we're going to select the branding option in this section. The next page is going to give us options for macOS branding as well as iOS branding. For this demonstration, we're going to focus on iOS branding, so we're going to go ahead and click on Default iOS Branding. The next page will show you what the current self-service app looks like. If you'd like to make any changes, click on the Edit button located at the bottom right corner of the page. This will unlock your options on the left of the page. So your first option will allow you to upload your school logo followed by your branding name. The branding name will be the words that appear to the right of your logo at the top of the app. After that, you're given the option to select 3 colors to better match your school's styling. Something to note is that when you make changes, it will give you a live preview to the right. This way, you can see what your self-service app is going to look like before you save and distribute it to the devices across your district. So once you're happy with the changes that you've made and you'd like to keep them, go ahead and click on the Save button located at the bottom right-hand corner of the page. And there you have it. You've now successfully branded your self-service app. Next, I'll go over how we can specify which devices are able to install each app through the use of scoping. In Jamf, you can find all of your purchased apps by clicking on Devices, and then selecting the Mobile Device Apps option on the left side of the page. This will open a page that shows your district's full app catalog that you can configure and scope as needed. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and choose the iTunes U app, and we're going to focus on the Scope option located at the top of the page. For us to make any changes to the scope of this app, we first need to click the Edit button, and this will allow us to make any changes that we need to for the scope of this app. If you're setting up an app that needs to be installed on all devices across your district, the best method would be setting your target mobile devices to all devices and your target users to all users. Once you've done this, go ahead and click on the Save button, and now this app will be installed on all devices across your district. If you only need an app to be available on a small number of devices, you can manually add those devices via the device name to the scope of an app. This method is really only viable if there are only a few individuals who will be using this app and the scope does not change often or at all. To do this, make sure your target mobile devices is set to specific and your target users is also set to specific. Then you can use the plus sign to add a specific device by searching for the device name. I will use student test as an example, and I will say add. Once I save my changes at the bottom of the page, now you'll see that there are 2 iPads that are capable of installing this app. For apps that have much larger but still specific scopes, it's far easier to use smart groups. All iPads within our district have user-specific data that allows us to better leverage smart groups to scope an app to hundreds or even thousands of specific devices with relative ease. Another benefit of using this method is that any new devices will automatically be added to these smart groups and will therefore be added to the scope of your apps without any additional effort. So here's how we can leverage this data for smart groups. As you can see, this is a student test iPad that we have on the screen. And under the user location, we have position, department, and building as our three primary points of information. So the student is our position, the department is our grad year, and the building is the building that the student is physically located. With these three pieces of information, we can actually do quite a lot. So for example, under our smart groups, we have Hillcrest teachers, and we've created this group by taking the building Hillcrest and our position teacher. And this would allow us to scope 51 specific devices to an app by simply adding one group. Other examples are high school 10th grade, all high school devices, and high school teachers. By using these smart groups, we can even scope much larger groups of devices. For example, instead of adding 1,761 devices individually to an app scope, we can simply add one group that will automatically contain these devices as well as any devices with these attributes in the future. So in our iTunes U example, if I wanted to add all student iPads from K to 6, I can click on Add, select Mobile Device Groups, and filter for K to 6. And as you can see, I have the option to add K to 6 devices that would include teachers, or K to 6 students, which would only include the devices for the students. If I only wanted to add students from K to 6, I can click Add next to that group and click Save. It's as easy as that. So next, I'd like to go over a few specific settings that you should pay attention to when you are setting up an app to be distributed to the devices across your district. All of these settings can be found under each particular app located in the General tab on the top of the page. The first setting is the app's category. Categories are an easy way to organize and categorize your apps so that they're easier to find by a user using self-service on their iPad or by a Jamf admin when they are on the mobile device section in page on Jamf. Further down, we will have distribution method, which has two selections to choose from. The first option, make available in self-service, will not automatically install the app onto a scoped device, but will instead make it an installation option in Jamf Self Service. The second option, install automatically, will immediately install the app onto the device once you have added it to the scope. Further down, we will see an option to schedule app updates through Jamf. With this, you can set a specific time of day for Jamf to check for any updates for the app that you're configuring. This will help to ensure that apps are always updated on your district devices and that everyone is running the most current version. And finally, we have an option that allows users to remove an app from their device. If you check this box, it will mean that this specific app can be removed by a student or employee if they either wish to redeem the storage on their device or if they simply no longer wish to have it installed. So we worked with our lead teachers to ensure that we have selected the appropriate settings for each app in our app catalog. Certain settings, such as the installation method, which you can find right up here, as well as the removal permissions are particularly important. For example, we'd want to ensure that a testing app is automatically installed onto student devices and they do not have permission to remove it. This helps to ensure that our teachers and students have the apps that they need in their classrooms.
So we now had a functional, secure way for teachers and students to determine what apps are currently available to them and to install those apps. The question then became, how do we add new apps to our catalog as needs changed? We again found our answer in self-service with the app request feature. App Request provides an easy solution for staff to request new applications. It's customizable to fit the needs of the organization regarding who can request apps and who can approve those requests. It also allows requesters to provide IT with any necessary, relevant information regarding the app and their needs for that app.
Next, I will go over how we can set up app requests using self-service in Jamf. To do this, we're going to need to open up Jamf in your browser, and we're going to go ahead and click on that sprocket located near the top right-hand corner of the page once again. And we're going to go ahead and scroll down to the self-service options, but this time we're going to go ahead and select app request. In order to make any changes, we're first going to need to click on the edit button located at the bottom right corner of the page. The first option is a checkbox to enable app requests in self-service for iOS. You're going to need to make sure that this box is checked, as app requests will not be available if this setting's not enabled. Next, we have the App Store country region, which we can simply leave as the user's location. And after that, we have app request form fields. Here, you will have up to 5 separate fields where you can ask the requester for any relevant information regarding the app that they're requesting and why they'd like it to be added to your district app catalog. Next, we'll go to the top of the page and click on Requesters and Approvers. The Requesters field is where you can select a static group of users who will have the ability to request apps. To create this group, you'll need to go under the Users section in Jamf and select the Static User Groups on the left corner of the page. Here, you can add a new static user group and include all of the users that you'd like to have permission to request new apps. So once you've created your static users group, you can go ahead and select it in your requesters field. This group will be the only users who will have the ability to request apps using self-service. Anyone not included in this group will not have these permissions, to ensure that you are only receiving valid requests and not students asking for games or entertainment apps. And finally, we have the approver email addresses. Here, you can add as many email addresses as you would like into this field, separated by commas or page breaks. Each email address that you have added will be sent an email each time a new app has been requested through self-service. For our process, I have my email address and a general app request email address added to this field. You can set this up in any way that best fits your organization's app request procedures. So once you have your settings configured, you can go ahead and click on the Save button located at the bottom right corner of the page, and that's all there is to it. So now I will show you an app request made from a district iPad. Now that we've set up the app request process in Jamf, I'll show you what it looks like when someone uses self-service to request an app that's been added to the catalog. To do this, I'll open self-service and click on the 3 vertical dots at the top left of the display. Here, there is normally an option to sign in with your Jamf credentials, but I've already signed in for the sake of time, so we can move on to the next step. Next, I'll tap on the search button at the bottom right, which will now allow me to search for an app that already exists in Jamf or for something new that I can request. So for this example, I'll look up Evernote. And as you can see, there is already one app available in self-service that may be a close match to my search, Genius Scan. There are also App Store suggestions based on my search, one of those choices being Evernote. If I'd like to request it, all I need to do is tap on Request next to my app of choice. This will bring up the 5 questions that we've configured in the app request settings in Jamf. For the sake of demonstration, I'll simply just type test for each answer. We, of course, do ask that our users add much more information than this, as it makes it far easier to make the decision of whether we can or cannot approve the app request. So once I've fully answered the questions, I can go ahead and tap on Submit at the top, and now I've requested my app. The email will then be sent to all of the addresses that were added to the approver field in Jamf. So here's a copy of an email that was sent to the approver addresses when someone requests an app through the app request process. So as you can see, this email contains the name of the requester, the name of the app, a link to view the app in the App Store, the price of the app, and a general summary of what this app is. We can also see the answers that the user has provided when they requested the app through self-service. Using this information, along with other predetermined guidelines that were agreed upon by lead teachers in IT, we can continue to the final steps in our app request process.
So staff could now request apps and provide us with any relevant information regarding the app. But how did we know which apps to approve and which ones to decline? First, and most importantly, we look for apps with current updates. You want to make sure that this new resource will work with your current version of iOS. You also want to make sure that the app will be used for multiple lessons, not just for one day or one particular assignment. You don't want to strain time and resources on an app that will not get significant usage. You want to determine if the app can be a web clip. If the app provides the same functionality as a website, a web clip will take up far fewer device resources than the application. You want to make sure that the app doesn't require any in-app purchases in order to be fully functional. In-app purchases are not allowable with managed Apple IDs, and this can cause frustration for you and your users down the line. You want to make sure that the app is age appropriate and that there are no obvious inappropriate uses. An app that can make any picture talk and say whatever you want might sound like a great idea for a biography presentation. But think about what fifth graders might do with that same app in their free time. And finally, you want to look for umbrella applications, apps that might serve a similar purpose. For example, if a teacher is requesting a Curious George game, suggest something more like a PBS Kids app that will grant you access to Curious George, Thomas the Train, and many other resources.
So once the user has submitted an app request to us, what's next? Well, each week, the Curriculum App Committee will review any new app requests to discuss their viability for district use. So if an app is approved by the committee, the requester is then contacted and the app will be installed onto their device for a 30-day trial period. Before the end of this trial period, the requester will need to fill out an app rubric in order to assess whether the app has properly fit their needs that they had listed in the app request process. But what if the requested app does not fit our predetermined guidelines? Well, then the app request will then be denied and the requester will still be contacted. We will let them know that their request has been denied and we'll give them the reason as to why we could not approve their request. We then be sure to record the app name and the reason for denial to ensure that we have ongoing records if this app is ever requested again in the future.
Now that we had crafted the perfect solution to meet the needs of both the IT department and the teaching staff here at Norwin, how did we sell it? Well, we explained it to teachers that with self-service and the app request process, we were going to be solving problems that would impact them at some point without these processes in place.
Security. So with Jamf Self Service and the app request process, we can now fully control which apps are installed onto our district devices. Jamf also grants us far better version control, making sure that we don't have any device running any outdated apps and helping to ensure that our apps will work with later versions of iOS. Jamf also helps to grant us better monitoring of privacy practices.
Better license management. With self-service and the new app request process, IT now has better license management, enabling us to keep better track of which departments are purchasing which licenses, enabling departments to use the resources that they paid for.
Streamlining of services. Using Jamf Self Service and the app request process allows us to have a single app that has been tested and approved instead of having to support a wide variety of apps that may all serve a very similar purpose. This also helps to lessen the burden on teachers and students, as they'll only need to learn to use one specific app that we know will be reliable and will fit their needs in the classroom.
And finally, we convinced them with a stack of use cases. Nothing hits home like a story of how things went wrong here in our buildings with our coworkers, not with some far-off stranger in a theoretical situation. I always keep a list of use cases in my back pocket with names attached to illustrate how things have gone wrong without these processes in place. As Frank Zappa once said, one size does not fit all. What works for us here at Norwin may not work in your district. You may not have the resources available to form a committee for app approvals. You might be on your own with this. But with Jamf Self Service and the app request process, you can take these processes and mold them to fit your organization's needs. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you can take this information and create a system that enables you to better manage apps in your district. Have a great JNUC.